Okay, good afternoon, good morning, or whatever time you're listening to this podcast. Welcome today into the podcast, Bronson and Lisbeth. I'll first start with Bronson. Can you please introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Coach Bronson. I've been coaching health and fitness for a little over 10 years. I personally follow a carnivore diet. I've been coaching keto for about almost 5 years. And I recently wrote a book, which I think we'll probably talk about. And I just want to help people understand that fitness and nutrition are part of the equation in our quality of life, and that we can make some changes by changing things in our nutrition. We can make some changes by doing things on the fitness side, but we really need to understand the importance that both of them play in the total picture of our lives.
Exactly. And well, you wrote a book about that, but it's called the Ultimate Ketogenic Fitness Book in English. It was launched last year in the USA, and only last week it was launched here in Holland, the Dutch version. Het Ultieme Ketogene Fitness Book came out on Amazon just last week, and we'll talk about that a bit more later on. First, I'm very interested to know, why did you write this book? How did you come about writing this?
It's I've been coaching for a while, and one of the things that I'm an educator at heart, so I've always been a coach, a teacher, a mentor, things like that. And one of the things that I realize is that there's only so much I can do working with people one-on-one. So I wanted a way to try to get the things that I'm seeing are working in people's lives out to more people. So that's where, social media and YouTube and all that kind of stuff is great, but there's still a very large population of people that don't access that regularly. So I felt like writing a book would be another way, just another medium that I could use to get that same information out to a whole different group of people.
Yeah, well, great. It says in the book that you started doing CrossFit when you were about 40 years old. How long ago is that?
A little over 10 years ago.
Okay. So about the
Yep.
same age. That's good. That's good.
I'll be 51 this year.
Yeah, well, me too. So what made you get started? How fit were you yourself when you started doing CrossFit, or when you started the ketogenic diet?
Yeah, so I thought I was fit, and that's kind of what got me started initially. I thought I was in shape, and then I realized that I wasn't. There's a couple long stories that we could go into there, but I realized that the image that I had of who I thought I was didn't match up with who I was in real life.
Hmm.
And I needed to make some kind of a change because I was overweight. I've lost 70 pounds since the beginning. I was not healthy. I had IBS. I had urgent bowels. There was a lot of just things in my body that weren't working properly. And I was depressed. I was anxious. I just overly stressed. It's crazy because I thought I was doing fine until I really became healthy and was doing fine and realized how bad I really was, like how unhealthy and how sad and how sick I really was. So a lot of people don't realize um, how poor their quality of life is until they start making improvements, and then they're like, oh my God, I can't believe I used to live this way. So that was definitely me, very much. So for me, fitness came first. um, I made some progress with fitness, got in better shape, and then I kind of reverted and started going back again, started being that unhealthy. I never, even with fitness, I never fixed the gut issues. I never fixed the digestive issues. I lost some fat, I built some muscle, but I was never really as healthy as I could have been. It wasn't until I cut out the veggies, cut out the processed food, cut out the alcohol, that stuff. When I get rid of that stuff, everything came together. My athletic performance improved, my health improved, I felt better. It took me about 8 years or so to find the
Eight
right
years.
combination of fitness and nutrition, to where I can just, I'm 50 years old. The last almost 5 years of my life have been the easiest ever.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah. So I can imagine that you think it's very important to share this with the world, with via all your channels, via social media, via your book, and that's where Lisbeth comes in, Lisbeth van Dijk. Can you introduce yourself, Lisbeth, and tell us how you got on track with Bronson?
I follow the ketogenic diet since a little bit over 4 years. And I was always looking for the combination of the ketogenic diet and fitness, building muscles. So the algorithm of internet helped me with that, because I've been Googling over and over again combinations of ketogenic, bodybuilding, ketogenic fitness. And then at a certain point in time, I think it was, well, you remember that I did the sports nutrition module from Nutrition Network, but it didn't give me much information on building muscles. And when I finished that around the same time, it was like beginning of the summer of last year, I came across an advertisement on Facebook, like a recommendation, you will like this page. And that was Bronson's page. So, and that's the internet algorithm, because they use the same words that you Google. So I entered the page, I saw the book. I think the very same day I ordered the book. I started reading the book. And there was like, I don't remember if it was in the book itself or in the toolkit. It said, if you have any questions, email me. So that's what I did. My question was, do you want the book translated in Dutch? I think within a week or two, we had an agreement.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what I was amazed about is that the Spanish version came out so quickly, because, yeah, well, maybe it's a bit of perfectionism. I don't know, but I really wanted to have a good book, a good translation. And well, I think the success is overwhelming. The first week, at least.
Yeah.
It helped me a lot, especially the part where it talks about the mindset. Why do you want it? Well, because this and this. And why do you want that? This is a tool. It's great. I mean, I knew the tool, but reading it again and translating it again, because one thing is reading a book, and totally something else is translating a book, because it's like studying. You study it, you will never forget it. So for me, it was a great experience, really. Thank you, Bronson.
No, thank you very much for doing it. It's been fascinating to, number one, just the surrealism of being an author in general, but now being an author and saying that you have a book that's been translated into another language, it's accessible in another country by people that you've never met before. And it's super surreal. And I really appreciate you reaching out to me and being part of this.
Yes, thank you very much. And we're picking the fruits of that as well here in the Netherlands, of course, because now we have this wonderful book where you can access in our own language. But I'm still wondering, Lisbeth, what gripped you about this book? Why did you think, wow, I need to translate this book into Dutch? Everybody needs to read this.
Because the principles are very easy to understand, but the approach is very different. And the combination of easy to understand and a different approach, it's like in the foreword, Ton said, it's not like 13 in a dozen. That's a Dutch expression, of course. Yeah. So it's not an average book, it's different. And that caught my attention, because there are a lot of books about the ketogenic diet, there are a lot of books about fitness. First of all, there are no good books about the combination. Well, at that time, there was not. I don't know if now there are. And this combination, easy to understand, for everybody, easy to understand. And if you are a scientist, then you can read the references. So the combination in total caught my attention, and it was like an urge, a feeling. I need to translate this.
It needs to get out.
Yeah, and I was quite nervous when I started. I was like, oh my God, how am I going to finish this? Will it be good enough? Will there be criticism? It was quite a job. I mean, your way of writing is very American. So
I'm not sure if that's a compliment or not, but thank you.
No, it is. It is, because it's very direct. And I'm also very direct. And I think most people that are in the fitness world, they are very direct. But yeah, I had to get used to the language. There was this chapter what was talking about cardio sucks for weight loss. I've been thinking about 3 days, how am I going to translate this in Dutch?
So what did you end up with?
Sorry?
What did you end up with? What's your
I think what I don't know about the top of my head, but it was the word sock. It was not literally translated.
no. Well, that's a good thing, I think.
Yeah.
Did you have any help along the way in your translating process?
In the end, I asked this medical doctor to for his advice, and he read the book, and he had very good advice as to the medical terms, to the vitamins, the minerals, but also language-wise, he had some suggestions. So I'm very, very grateful to him. And then Ton, he read the book also, and he said he applied everything as from the first day. And we had lunch last week, and he was explaining to me. So every time he goes to the gym 5 days a week, like me, he implements everything that's in the book, and he discusses it with his personal trainer. And his personal trainer is, oh wow, and yeah, and he's very enthusiastic, and I really liked his forward. I really liked it. It was it was genuine. It was authentic. It was no blah, 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 but just straight to the point. He said he was very privileged to read the book as a first person reading the book. So I really liked it. I read it and I was like, I shared it with you, Louisette, to see what you thought about it. Straight to the point, and I think it has added value.
Yes. Well, for people who are wondering who Ton is, it's Ton van Erp, the founder of Keton One. So he wrote the foreword to this. And I'm so happy that it came out in Dutch last week. It went straight to #1 on the Dutch best-selling list in Amazon, which is totally mind-blowing. So, and well done, Bronson, well done, Lisbeth. It's a very, very big accomplishment. But back to the book. People who are now listening and wondering, well, what is this book going to bring me? What new insights are there going to be? And there's this conviction that many people have that it's not possible to build any more muscle on a ketogenic diet. Well, Bronson, you're obviously the living proof that it is possible, and Lisbeth as well. She's also implying this. Can you explain why people do not have to worry about ketogenic diets and not being able to build muscle mass?
Yeah, so the ketogenic diet, and one of the things that I want people to understand is that the ketogenic diet is not about what you're taking away, as it's not about what you're adding. A lot of people think that ketogenic diet is, oh, I'm going ketogenic, I need to eat more fat. In many cases, more fat is an undefined term that really just means more than you've been eating, not necessarily more than everything else that you're eating. So that's one thing. It's not about adding fat. It's about taking out the things from your body that are reducing your body's ability to perform. When we eat carbs, when we eat seed oils, when we eat processed food, our body has to do extra work to manage the extra stress that those foods are causing in our body. So it doesn't allow us to do things like grow muscle, recover from exercise, burn body fat, all those types of things. So the ketogenic diet is a way of optimizing how your body functions. By definition, if your body is functioning better, it will do the things that you're trying to get it to do better. So if you're trying to grow muscle, and everything is working better, then growing muscle will be easier. Yeah. Because you're not giving it extra things to do where it's got to worry about managing stress. It can just do what you want it to do. From a scientific perspective, the idea that we need carbohydrates to build muscle is absolutely not true. Our body can produce everything that we need when it comes to glycogen and muscle activation and fuel. So there's tons of information. If you do any research, for anybody that's curious, look up Finney and Volek, look up Professor Noakes and the work that they've done in the sports industry, and how they've proven many times over that our body can replenish glycogen as needed. We're never going to run out of glycogen. If we were to run out of glycogen, our muscles would stop working. So the idea of depleting our glycogen stores isn't a thing. It never has been, and that's not how our bodies work. So all you need to do to build muscle is get adequate protein, stimulate the muscle to grow, and then rest and give it time to do the growing. Those are the three things. That's all you need. You don't need carbs at all.
Yeah, I was going to ask what other factors are important for muscle growth, but you already answered that. So enough protein,
Yep.
Resistance training, and enough sleep or rest.
Absolutely. And there's a lot more information coming out. I'm hoping this isn't a surprise to a lot of people, but there is a new data analysis article that came out recently that kind of hits home the point that resistance training is more effective for metabolic health than aerobic training. So for anybody who's looking at doing something to get fit and they want to start walking, that's great. If you're just getting started and walking is all you've got, then go for that. At some point, you need to start pushing what your muscles can do, because that's the way to improve your metabolic health.
Exactly. That was going to be my next question, but you already answered that one. So I'm a bit off track now.
I can dig into that a little bit more if you want.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So the difference between aerobic training and resistance training really has to do with I like to call aerobic training simulating a healthy metabolism, because while you're doing the work, your body is doing things like if you had a lot of muscle. So when we have muscle, our metabolic rate increases, the demand for fuel increases, the things that our body is able to do, all of the systems in our body, our hormones, our immune system, our digestive system, all of these things work better when we have more muscle. When we exercise from a cardio, if I get on a treadmill and I walk for an hour, I'm doing something physically in that moment to make my metabolism work. Yeah. It only works though while I'm doing it. Once I stop, everything goes back the way it was. Right. So, and aerobic work is great while you're doing it. The problem is we can't do aerobic work 24 hours a day.
No.
So, and that's what the problem is. Often you see people who start working out, they go to the gym, they get on the elliptical for 30 minutes, and then 6 months, a year into it, they're like, I have to be on the elliptical for 2 hours in order to get anything out of it, because your body just adapts, and then you have to get on there longer and longer and longer and longer to see any benefit. When you build muscle, you can get the same benefit from a workout. You grow that lean mass, your body's going to increase its metabolic performance, whether you're doing something actively or not. Yeah. And that's the biggest difference.
Exactly. So if there are people out there who are athletes or doing endurance training, and they might think, well, this is not for me because it's all about building muscle, so I'm going to put this book aside. They're wrong, right?
Absolutely. 100%.
How would this benefit them then?
Yeah, every athlete needs muscle, particularly endurance athletes. They are doing things that are more demanding in the deterioration, let's say, of their lean mass and what their body's doing. So they need to maintain as much of that. They need to be eating protein. They need to be building muscle. They need to be doing stuff. That's just from the performance perspective of wear and tear on their body. From a performance perspective, increasing their ability to perform in their sport, more lean mass means a larger pool of energy. More lean mass means less effort expended on work. So when we say for endurance athletes in particular that you need more muscle, I'm not telling a triathlete that they need to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger. Okay, that would not make sense, because then there is the reality of weight to speed ratio and all those other types of things. And if you do get too heavy, then yes, you are going to run slower. There is still a benefit. I have never met a single endurance athlete that I've worked with. Not that I've met. I'll say I haven't ever worked with an endurance athlete who didn't benefit from adding some more muscle. And part of the reason is, one, they're stronger. Two, they have a larger energy pool. Three, again, more work is done at less energy expense. And then number four, when you build muscle, you train your body to do things differently, and you give yourself a break from that repetitive overtraining of running. Most runners, all they do is run. And then they wonder why they have shin splints and bad backs and bad knees and bad hips and all these other different things. It's because they're not training their body how to function in general and do the things that the body is designed to do. They're only focused on their sport. And when you get into sports science and you get into sports training, eventually everyone gets to the point where they understand that if you want to be a good runner, a good soccer player, a good rugby player, a good basketball player, you have to be a good athlete first. And that too often people try to be good at their sport before they make their body good at movement, before they make their body good at just being a good functioning human person. And that's where people get mixed up.
Yeah. And what can you tell us about the energy metabolism for endurance athletes who have more muscle? Are they able to switch better between the different fuel sources?
It's really not any different. When we talk about being ketogenic in particular, the one thing that I've noticed is two things. One, there's no bonks. People don't get to that 8 or 10 mile distance and then all of a sudden they hit a wall. They can just go. Numerous people that I've worked with have gone, number one, they run faster. Once they get adapted, everybody that I've worked with has set personal records on their runs.
Yeah.
Everything from 5Ks to marathons. And then they don't bonk, so they can last longer before they start feeling like maybe I'm hitting a wall. And then if they do, now the cool thing about this little side note is there are now companies coming out with ketone gels instead of carb gels and all these different things, right? So if you are ketogenic as a runner, you now have access to ketones and other types of fuels that aren't going to set you off and mess up with your adaptation.
Yeah.
But in general, they don't need it as much, right? And that's another thing of having that that adaptation. Your body just gets so efficient at doing the things that it wants to do. The best part about it, particularly when it comes to training, is your recovery is it's tripled.
Yeah.
So for somebody who's running 30, 50, maybe 100 miles a week, and they feel like they're just completely trashed all the time, they can do that same routine that they're doing as they get adapted and start feeling good. I had somebody I was working with last year ran a half marathon for the first time after working with me on nutrition and in fitness. And when I work with people in fitness, on the fitness side, it's often that I take endurance athletes and I don't let them run it off for 90 days. Particularly if they've been overtraining. I just tell them, you're not running for 90 days. We do a bunch of other things. We work on aerobic capacity. We work on some different fuel systems and things. We get them adapted, and then they go for a run. And the first run, after not running for 90 days, they run and they beat their time by 5 minutes or 2 minutes or a minute or
Amazing.
whatever. And they're like, what is going on? How does this even happen?
Yeah.
It's because we're fixing some of the foundational things about how your body works. So it makes the running easier. It happens every time.
That's amazing. Yeah. So we've been talking about endurance athletes now, but another group of people you're focused on is women over 40. Why is it important for them to build more muscle, to be more metabolically flexible?
Oh my gosh. When you get, whoever was watching this, when you get the book and you read about my mom, I think that will answer that question.
Yeah.
My mom just turned 69 last week, a couple weeks ago. And her favorite thing to do is deadlift and eat steak. And eat steak.
Yeah.
Cool. And it's so amazing and so cool to be able to not just watch my mom enjoy fitness and enjoy what her body can do and have the confidence and the independence and the awareness to be able to say, look, I can do whatever I need to do. I was talking with her the other day. We actually did an interview with a group from a senior organization in the US. And she was saying that as a grandmother, as a mother who's almost 70 years old, the thing that she really appreciates about fitness is that she's still at a point where she can still help her kids. She can still contribute to her grandkids' lives. She can watch her grandkids and not feel like it's overwhelming because she's physically exhausted by the end of the day. She still works a full-time job. She still does all these things, and it's mostly because she's ketogenic and she exercises. She lifts heavy weight. So the ability, it's all about independence. It's about quality of life, and it's about what can you do, how long can you do it without having to ask for help.
Yeah.
I saw a statistic recently. It's funny, Elizabeth, you took the nutrition course, the sports nutrition at Nutrition Network. I just did a master class with them last week. And one of the things I talked about is that in America, I'm not sure what the numbers are out there. In America, I think it was 70% of people over 65 are going to need assisted living in their life. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, so most of those people are probably 90, 95 years old. But if that's the case, why is the number 65?
Yeah.
Right. I'm thinking, okay, I could see 70%. If you said 85 was the number, that would make a lot more sense to me. But 65? Like, that's crazy. So that's not what we're looking for. We don't need a society of people who are completely dependent at 65 years old. That's crazy.
So young.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, amazing. And because the thing you're talking about now is sarcopenia, the loss of muscle mass when you get older, which is like a natural process that happens to everybody who's aging.
Yes.
So all the more important to work on that to make sure that you don't lose any muscle mass or even gain some
I like
muscle
to say
mass.
that sarcopenia is something that happens to everybody who's not fighting it.
Yeah, exactly. So get out there and move.
It doesn't have to
Yeah.
happen. Absolutely.
Yeah. And why is it also important for women for their hormonal balance? When they go through menopause, why is it important to have more muscle mass?
Well, there's something that a lot of people don't realize is that a lot of hormones, everyone talks about you need fat for your hormones. Well, you need protein for your hormones too. There's two major substrates that make up hormones, amino acids and fatty acids.
Yeah.
We need them both. So anybody who's saying that you need fat over protein to manage your hormones is not getting the whole picture. Again, your metabolic function, when we talk about metabolic function, let's take a step back. What is metabolic function? Metabolic function is the entirety of how your body works. Every system in your body, every part of your body, so it's our immune system, it's our cardiovascular system, it's our endocrine system, it's how our hair grows, it's how our muscles utilize fuel, it's our digestive system, everything. Okay. All of that, how all of those chemicals work in our body, how our gut microbiome interacts with our brain, our lymph system, all that stuff. It's all our metabolic system. So when we say our metabolic performance improves when we have more muscle, we are literally saying that every single thing about how our body functions works better if we have muscle, if we have more muscle. When we don't prioritize building muscle, we default to decreasing our health.
Yeah. And that's what people need to realize.
That's the simplest way to say it.
Yeah, because most people see muscle just as something that's there on the top of your shoulders or your arms that looks nice and sporty, but it's also like this whole metabolic system, like an organ in itself.
Yes, it is. It's the largest organ in our body, and the thing is, and this is where the perception of fitness and muscle. When we say everyone needs muscle, when I say women need to build muscle, so many women get this picture in their head of Arnold Schwarzenegger. It's like, no, that's not. This is not what we want you to look like. Most women who build muscle and who have a good skeletal muscle mass percentage, you would never know unless they told you. Yeah. Because they just look different. They look like they're in shape. They look fit. They don't look skinny. No. But they don't look plump either. It's a really cool the whole idea of women wanting to look toned. Okay. Yeah. I personally am tired of hearing that word because that's what women say, because here's why. When women say they want to look toned, what they're saying is, I want to look muscular without being muscular. Yeah, exactly. So, but at the same time, they're going to say, well, I don't want muscles. Well, then you can't be toned. You can't be toned. No. Muscle provides the shape that makes you look fit. So if you want to look toned, you have to build muscle. So that competing things in a lot of people's head. And that's another thing that you just touched on that. Mostly women, they think they look at the scales and they want to lose weight. They want to look thin and skinny and a little bit of toned up as well. And the funny thing is, when you start gaining muscle, what happens to your scales? Your weight goes up. Yeah,
And that frees a lot of women out because they're aiming to lose weight, to be lighter. And the funny thing is that when you gain muscle, you become heavier. So your BMI goes up. I'm sure if we would measure your BMI, that you'd be officially overweight.
I am. Yep.
Yeah.
I'm almost obese.
Yeah. Oh, you look very obese. No, you don't. That's another thinking pattern we need to get rid of.
Yes,
In
very
that, in
much.
that,
And there's a
yeah.
chapter in the book called Fat Loss is Dead, where we talk about just that. Is the idea that losing fat doesn't do anything for you.
No.
What is the quality of your life? What can your body do? How free do you feel? Do you have to say no to activities because you can't physically perform them, or you feel like you'll be too tired afterwards? If that kind of restriction is in your life, then there's things that you need to do physically to improve your freedom.
Yeah.
Because it's all about freedom.
Yeah.
One of my slogans, one of the things I love to say is fitness is freedom. And because it literally is. If you can't do, it doesn't matter if you've got the best cholesterol numbers, the best A1C, the best blood pressure, the best insulin, whatever. If you can't get off the couch and go play with your grandkids, if you can't go garden in the backyard, if you can't go for a hike with your spouse, then what's the point?
Yeah. You just stay put on the couch with your perfect blood
Yeah,
works. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
That's really exciting.
Yeah.
Woo!
Not really. Any thoughts on fasting? Because intermittent fasting and OMAD is really popular also in Netherlands
Sure,
now.
sure.
What does that do for muscle building?
Nothing.
Okay, next question. Can you elaborate a bit on that?
Yeah, if you're fasting, fasting should be a natural progression of what your body kind of triggers you to do.
Mm.
I don't see in the people that I've worked with much success with people trying to eat specifically 2 o'clock. I see a lot more success with people eating to satiety and eating, providing their body what their body needs. And then they kind of naturally, myself as an example, I naturally eat 2 meals a day. I just don't feel hungry in between.
No.
So if I tried to specifically, and that's the thing, most people that I work with, most people that I've seen, if they're eating naturally, if they're eating to satiety, they're eating enough at each meal, they usually tend to fall into about 2 meals a day by default. And so this over fascination we have, or over obsession we have with trying to fit into a window and do this and do that. If you have a busy schedule and maybe finding time to eat is a challenge, that's a different thing. But in most cases, if you eat a good meal, you'll be hungry a few hours later, eat another good meal, and that will probably last you till the next day.
Yeah. And we were talking about protein intake. That's also important, very important to build muscle. How much would you recommend on a daily basis?
As
What
much as you
formula
can
do you
get,
use? As much as you
as
can.
much as you can get.
Is there a minimum intake?
Yeah, so I like to start people off with 1 gram per pound of lean mass. So if you weigh 200 pounds and you're 25% body fat, then 150 grams is going to be your starting number for protein. And most people, that's a good number for them to stay at, and they're fine, perfectly fine there. Some people who may be athletes trying to build muscle, trying to improve athletic performance, 1.2 grams per pound of lean mass is a good place to go. But usually over 1.2 isn't needed unless you're really trying to do something specific. And that's it. Once you find that number, as long as you're always improving, and honestly, even if something happens and you're losing lean mass, and say you get sick or something like that, then that's actually an indicator you need more protein. So once you find that number, there's almost never a reason to go below it.
Yeah. And if I mention that number to people, they roll their eyes and they go like, "Wow, how do I get that much protein? Now that means I'll be eating meat all day."
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And there's this discussion going on. I'm sure it's the same in the US between plant-based people and more animal-based people. What would you recommend to people who are not willing to eat that much animal protein? Is it fine to take shakes, for example?
if you're not willing to eat animal protein, you have to understand that you are making the decision to make your progress harder than it needs to be.
Yeah.
Animal protein is the most bioavailable, it's the most nutrient dense, and it's the most satiating. Anything besides that is, number one, going to be a lot more complicated of a process that you have to go through to make sure you're getting all the proteins that you need while you're doing all of that work. I think a lot of that stuff, you almost have to be a chemist if you're not getting it from animal protein.
Yeah.
To try to figure out what combinations I got to do this with that and that with this and everything else. And then all the supplements that you have to add on, not to mention the whole idea of, if you're eating mostly plants and you're getting all of your protein from plants, we got to remember that 30% of plant material is undigestible. It's cellulose. We don't have anything in our body that can digest cellulose. So when we're eating plants, you may get a lot of the protein in the food, it may be on the plate, but we are not digesting all of the cellulose. We're not getting all of that stuff in our body. The bioavailability of that protein from the plants is not as high as it is for meat.
No.
So you have to eat 3, 4, 5, 6 times as much food in order to get the same amount. It's possible. If someone wants to do it for whatever reason, I'm not going to say don't do it. Just understand that the level of effort is going to be way higher. The result of the stress that that's going to put on your quality of life, is that worth it? The stress that it's going to put on your body, all that extra food that you have to eat, is that worth it? So there's a bunch of questions that need to be asked.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And you just mentioned supplements. Are there any other supplements you would recommend in general for muscle growth or metabolic health?
For just health in general, I think particularly for anyone that's going keto, magnesium is a good thing for most people to get. It's probably, the more I read and research magnesium, the more I'm realizing that it's probably one of the most deficient minerals that we have as a human race all over the place. So I think magnesium is a good thing to take. Outside of that, in general, electrolytes would probably be at the top of the list. Sodium, when we go ketogenic, when we cut out the carbs and the processed foods, our bodies don't hold on to it as much. So we need to make sure that we're replenishing that. And particularly for athletes, when you're an athlete and you're trying to perform, you need more sodium than normal. So the average person should be in the 3 grams to 5 grams of sodium per day. An athlete, somebody who's an endurance runner, you could go up to 10 or 12. It all depends on trying what works good for you. I'm around 6 to 8 right now. I do about 8 grams of sodium a day. And I'm not an endurance runner. I can't even imagine if I was running for hours a day. So sodium, I think, is probably the number one thing. And then outside of that, from just general health perspective, get some sunlight. And if you can't, get some vitamin D. That vitamin D is vital for all sorts of things, particularly testosterone, if you're trying to grow muscle and be athletic.
Oh, great. There's a whole chapter on that in your book as well. So if people want to check that out, to get the book. And the funny thing is, you were talking about sodium intake and the much higher amount than it's generally advised.
Yeah.
Isn't that, I know the answer to this, but for other people, is that bad for your blood pressure?
No, not at all.
That's
no.
still
Blood
the
pressure,
idea that's out there,
without going into too far. Blood pressure is more about the balance of your hydration and your electrolytes. So if you are dehydrated, there's 2 levels. There's the potassium and sodium. If that mixture is off in either direction, you're going to have blood pressure issues. It's inflammation, not sodium.
No.
Right? You can have a low sodium diet and eat a bunch of carbs, and you're going to have high blood pressure. That's where we're at today in society.
Yeah.
It's when you stop the carbs and you replace the salt that your body's trying to use, that things get balanced out and you lose that high blood. Again, this is one of the cool things about doing this for so long and seeing how it works in actual people. I was the same way. I was brought up, particularly being Black, Black people have hypertension. You don't put salt on your food. You can't do that. It's a racial thing. More Black people have hypertension in America than anything else. That's what I was ingrained with when I was growing up. And now I can't not eat food without salt. Like, it's got to have salt and it's got to have a lot of it.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And my blood pressure is fantastic. And I'm
And
50 years
yeah.
old. You know,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah, and that's one of the first things that I always notice with when I put my clients on a ketogenic diet, their blood pressure comes down like within days. It goes
Within
so
days.
fast.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah. So anybody out there with hypertension, go and change your diet.
Yes, go change
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, and something else. You also did a case study. I think last year it came
Yeah.
out.
Yeah. Last year came out. We did a case study with 30 women. I think we had 24 actually finish. All women over 50, 45. I forget the low end age, who were peri or postmenopausal. And we did keto. We did functional fitness for 8 weeks. And then we just looked at the numbers. We did fitness benchmarks at the beginning and at the end. We did body composition tracking. We did their macro tracking. So we got all the information over the 8 weeks, and there was general improvement across the board from body composition. They gained muscle, they lost fat, they got stronger, they got faster. All the numbers from all the different components that we look at from a fitness perspective and a general health perspective, body composition wise, all got better. The best part about it, and this is really what the whole point was, we wanted the data to show that this works, right? Okay, we have a case study, we can say this works, but the cool part was every single one of the women had something to report about their daily life that was better.
Yeah.
Less hot flashes, better sleep, bigger, their clothes somehow got bigger, like all of these things, more energy throughout the day. One woman was like, I opened a jar for the first time without having to ask my husband to do it. Like just all of these things. So just understanding that the numbers mean one thing, but how that affects your life is where the magic is. That's what actually makes a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I really recognize that. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I'll put the link to your study in the show notes, so anyone who wants to read that can find it there. Is there anything else you would like to ask Bronson or Lisbeth?
No, I just want to say thank you, both of you guys, for supporting the book and getting the word out there. I think I'm looking forward to, I don't know if you guys do this, I'm looking forward to maybe getting a big swell of support and coming out there and doing a conference or something sometime. So
Yeah.
I would love to
Yeah.
do that.
I'll
And
see what I
Elizabeth,
can do.
yeah, and I just want to say, Elizabeth, thank you very much for taking the time out. I know it wasn't easy. Thank you for being patient with me. We went back and forth a bunch of times trying to figure stuff out. So I really appreciate it.
Yes. Well,
It
thank
was
you
my
very much.
pleasure. It was my pleasure. And I have a question. Are you going to write the next book?
I actually have 3 ideas on my whiteboard right now that I'm looking at.
Oh,
So
okay.
I'm not sure which one I want to go with. I think this year my goal is to get the book on Audible. So I think that's my first goal. I want to get this book on Audible and then start thinking about what the next one's going to be.
And
Yeah.
you are going to speak it to...
Yes, that's
Yeah,
the
okay.
plan. Yeah.
Oh, well then, think of me for the Dutch version.
Hey, let's do it. We can totally do it. That'd be great.
Yeah, that'll be awesome. Well, plenty of ideas, plenty of new input coming out. So anyone who's listening to this and who wants to read the book in Dutch, it's now available on Amazon in Dutch as well. Any questions, they can reach out to me or to Lisbeth or to you, Bronson. Where can they find you on the internet?
If you search Ultimate Ketogenic Fitness, all of my stuff comes up.
Great. I'll put the link in the show notes as well.
Thanks.
Great. Well, thank you, Lisbeth. Thank you, Bronson, for this for taking the time to talk to me here in the podcast. And well, I'm looking forward to seeing you in Holland one day.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it.
Good. Okay,
Great.
thank you very much and talk to you soon.
Bye.